Good morning, dear students. Today we will discuss Class 8 History, Chapter 4 Colonialism and Tribal Societies. We have already started this chapter, so today the remaining parts. First of all, changes in the life of tribal people due to arrival of the Britishers. Changes in the life of tribal people due to arrival of the Britishers. Before the coming or before the arrival of the Britishers, the tribal people lived independent life. They were happy, they were satisfied. But after the arrival of the Britishers, the British India government introduced forest law, and as per the forest law, the tribal people were not allowed to enter the forest and they were not allowed to use the forest products. So the tribal people who depend on forest and the forest products entirely, they lost their means of livelihood. They lost their means of livelihood. Secondly, Britishers also banned shifting cultivation, so the tribal people who depend on shifting cultivation for their living, they also had to search other different job or the occupation, and there also they didn't get good wages, so they suffered a lot economically. And the third, the tribal people were exploited, they were dominated, they were suppressed by the moneylenders, by the traders, and by the British government. And fourth, the tribal people were also forced by the British government to change their religion. The tribal people were also forced to change their religion. So, here the tribal people also lost their own identity, own culture. That means we can see the drastic changes in the life of the tribal people due to the arrival of the Britishers. Now let's see changes in the role of tribal chief after the arrival of Britishers. Changes in the role of tribal chiefs after the arrival of the Britishers. The tribal chief, they were more powerful before the arrival of the Britishers. They made the laws, for the tribal community. But after the arrival of the Britishers, the tribal chief, they lost their administrative power. Point number one, the tribal chief after the arrival of the Britishers lost their administrative power. And point two, after the arrival of the Britishers, the tribal chief, they had to follow the law made by the British. They had to follow the law made by the British. And third, the tribal chief as well as the common tribal people, tribal chief as well as the common tribal people, they became only the order bearer. They became only the order bearer of the British government. Okay, that means सिर्फ आदेश सुनने वाला ही बना ये लोग, आदेश देने वाले नहीं. That means we can see here, due to the arrival of the Britishers, drastic changes came in the life of the tribal people. They lost their own identity and culture. They suffered a lot economically. They had to change their occupation. There also they didn't get good wages. Okay, they were exploited, they were tortured, they were suppressed, they were dominated by the British government, by the money lenders, by the traders, etc. Okay. and they were also compelled to change their religion. So drastic changes we can see in the life of the tribal people after the arrival of the Britishers. That means though they were living independent life, happy life, but after the arrival of the Britishers, they became dependent. They became helpless. So the tribal people wanted changes. Tribal people wanted changes. Tribal people wanted to live independent life. That's why here starts tribal revolt or the Munda revolt. Here starts tribal revolt or the Munda revolt. And why Munda revolt or the tribal revolt started? This revolt was started because tribal people, they were exploited, they were dominated, they were suppressed by the British government, by the moneylenders, by the traders. Tribal people started Munda revolt because the tribal people lost their own identity, own culture. Tribal people started Munda revolt because the Britishers, they were trying to convert the religion of the tribal people forcefully. Okay, and the tribal people started revolt because the Britishers didn't allow the tribal people to enter the forest and use the forest products, and also banned the shifting cultivation. Now, Munda revolt or the tribal revolt took a big form under the leadership of Birsa Munda. Under the leadership of Birsa Munda. Birsa Munda inspired the tribal people. Birsa Munda inspired the tribal people to fight against the British rule and to set up the Munda Raj. That means Birsa Munda inspired the tribal people to fight against the domination, exploitation, torture of the British government, and at the same time Birsa Munda also inspired the tribal people to set up their own rule, that is the Munda Raj. Not the British Raj, but the Munda Raj. Birsa Munda also tried to create awareness among the people. Birsa Munda also tried to create awareness among the people, and he tried to do away the social evil practices like gambling, use of alcohol, okay, and he tried to create awareness among the people. He tried to unite all the tribal people. Now, the tribal, they also started attacking the police stations. They also attacked the British officials. They also attacked the moneylenders. Okay. Now, consequence of Munda revolt. Consequence of Munda revolt. Consequence or the result of the Munda revolt. Definitely, the Munda revolt or the tribal revolt had a great impact in the life of the tribal people as well to the Britishers. When we talk about the tribal people, due to Munda revolt, the revolt tried to create the sense of unity. The revolt tried to create the sense of unity in the minds of the tribal people. The tribal people became conscious of their own identity and culture, and also they became aware of their unity and strength. Okay, and when we talk about the Britishers also understood. Britishers also understood the strength of the tribal people after the Munda revolt. But alas, the tribal or the Munda revolt Munda revolt was suppressed. Tribal or the Munda revolt was suppressed. Why? Because the tribal people, they were not having the sophisticated weapon which the Britishers had. The tribal people, they were technologically backward. That is also the reason they lost the revolt, and at the same time the tribal people, they couldn't unite. That means the tribal communities, different tribal communities were there, they couldn't unite at a time, and they couldn't fight combinedly at a time against the Britishers. This was also the drawback of the Munda revolt. Okay. Okay, thank you. This much for today. We try to solve the question answer of the book, okay? And I hope you can solve 100% of the text questions after going through this lecture. Thank you.